Welcome to Sleepy Travel Stories. Tonight, let me take you on a journey to a faraway place. Close your eyes, relax, and let the world drift away. The morning air in Colombo carries something special just before sunrise. A coolness that won't last long, mixed with the distant salt tang of the Indian Ocean and the earthy promise of a day that will unfold across an entire island. As we stand together on the weathered platform of Colombo Fort Railway Station, you can feel that anticipation in your chest, the way your breath seems to settle deeper as you take in the scene around us. The station awakens slowly, like an old friend stretching after a long night's rest. Above us, the colonial-era roof stretches in gentle arcs, its metal framework painted in that particular shade of green you only find on old railway buildings. Not quite emerald, not quite forest, but something that speaks of journeys taken and stories collected over more than a century. The early morning light filters through the gaps, creating soft rectangles of gold that shift and dance as the sun climbs higher beyond the city. Our train waits patiently at platform 2, and from here, even stationary, it holds an unmistakable character. The blue and red carriages show their age gracefully, like well-worn leather that's been loved into softness. Each car tells its own story through small details. A window slightly fogged from the cool morning, a brass fitting that catches the light just so, the gentle curve of steps worn smooth by countless feet climbing aboard for their own adventures into the hill country. You can hear the quiet conversations of other early travelers, their voices mixing Sinhala, Tamil, and English in that particular Sri Lankan way that feels like a gentle song. A vendor calls out softly about tea and short eats, his voice carrying the unhurried rhythm of someone who knows that the best journeys begin without rushing. The sound echoes off the high ceiling and comes back to us softer, mellowed by the vastness of this space that has witnessed so many departures and returns. As we walk closer to our carriage, the details become more intimate and welcoming. The train's engine, though it won't strain up into the mountains for some time yet, already hums with a low, steady vibration that you can feel in the platform beneath your feet. It's not urgent or demanding, more like the purr of a large, content cat preparing for a long, lazy afternoon in the sun. The sound seems to settle something in your shoulders, releasing a tension you perhaps didn't even know you were carrying. The conductor, a gentleman whose calm presence suggests years of guiding travelers through Sri Lanka's most beautiful landscapes, checks his pocket watch with the unhurried precision of someone who understands that the best experiences unfold in their own perfect time. His white uniform is crisp in the morning air, and when he smiles and gestures toward our carriage, you feel welcomed into something larger than a simple train journey, a tradition of slow travel that honors both the destination and every moment along the way. Stepping up into the carriage feels like entering a floating living room from another era. The wooden floors, polished by decades of journeys, creak ever so slightly under our feet, not with wear, but with character. The seats, upholstered in deep blue fabric, face large windows that promise unobstructed views of everything we'll pass. Right now, Those windows frame the bustling life of Colombo morning. Vendors arranging their colorful displays, commuters beginning their day, the distant movement of the harbor where ships rest like sleeping giants against the horizon. The air inside carries the faint scent of old wood and metal polish mixed with something indefinably tropical that might be frangipani from the trees visible beyond the station, or perhaps the lingering essence of countless previous passengers who've carried with them the flowers, spices, and warm breezes of this remarkable island. It's comforting in the way that familiar scents can transport you, even before the train has moved an inch, into a state of gentle anticipation. As you settle into your seat by the window, the cushions welcome you with that perfect balance of support and softness that suggests comfort for the long journey ahead. The fabric is cool against your back, and you can feel yourself naturally relaxing into the rhythm that this train seems to encourage. A slower pace where minutes stretch and breathing comes easier. Outside, the platform continues its gentle morning choreography, but from inside our carriage, it all takes on a dreamy quality, like watching life unfold through a peaceful lens. The other passengers boarding around us carry the same unhurried energy. A family with children speaks in quiet, excited tones about the journey ahead. An elderly couple shares a thermos of tea, steam rising between them like a small prayer for safe travels. A young backpacker adjusts his pack and settles in with a well-worn guidebook, his face already taking on that expression of someone preparing to be amazed. Their presence adds to the sense of shared adventure, but without any urgency or stress. Just the collective contentment of people who've chosen to travel slowly and savor every moment. Through the window, you notice how the morning light is beginning to change the character of everything it touches. The rough concrete of the platform now shows flecks of embedded shell and coral, remnants of Sri Lanka's intimate relationship with the ocean. The metal rails stretch away from the station like two silver ribbons laid carefully across the landscape, disappearing around a gentle curve that hints at the wonders waiting beyond the city limits. Even the utilitarian aspects of the station, the signal boxes, the switching equipment, the practical infrastructure of rail travel, seem softened and made beautiful by this golden hour light. The train's whistle sounds once, a long, melodious note that doesn't startle, but rather announces itself like a singer beginning a favorite song. The sound carries across the station and seems to hang in the air for a moment, mixing with the calls of birds roosting in the station's eaves and the distant sounds of Colombo waking up. It's a sound that speaks of journeys and possibilities, of landscapes waiting to be revealed, mile by gentle mile. You feel the first subtle movement before you see it, a barely perceptible shift in the carriage that tells you we're beginning our departure. It's so gradual that for a moment, you might wonder if you imagined it. But then the platform begins its slow slide past the window, and you realize we're finally underway. The sensation is remarkably smooth, like being carried along by some vast, gentle current, rather than being pulled by mechanical force. As the platform gives way to the outskirts of the station, you catch glimpses of the infrastructure that makes this journey possible. The careful engineering that allows this train to climb from sea level to over 6,000 feet with such grace and steadiness. But even these practical elements are rendered beautiful in the morning light. The switching yards become geometric patterns of steel and stone. The maintenance sheds look like small temples to the art of locomotion, and everything is softened by the tropical vegetation that seems to grow with such abundance here that it transforms even industrial spaces into something approaching paradise. The rhythm of the wheels on the rails begins to establish itself, that distinctive sound that train travelers know well, but which seems particularly musical here, as if the Sri Lankan railways were tuned to a more melodious key than their counterparts elsewhere. It's not the urgent clacking of high-speed travel, but rather a gentle, hypnotic percussion that seems designed to lull passengers into a state of peaceful observation. The sound varies slightly as we cross different sections of track, creating a subtle symphony that will accompany us all the way to the mountains. Already, the character of our surroundings is beginning to shift. The dense urban fabric of Colombo starts to loosen and breathe, showing glimpses of green between buildings, small gardens where banana trees spread their generous leaves like natural umbrellas, and courtyards where the morning's washing hangs in colorful lines that flutter like prayer flags in the warming breeze. Children wave from doorways and windows, their faces bright with the simple joy of seeing the train pass, and you find yourself waving back, drawn into this friendly exchange that seems to happen automatically here, a ritual of acknowledgement between those who journey and those who witness the journey. The landscape visible through your window begins to tell the story of Sri Lanka's incredible diversity. Even here, still close to the capital, you can see how quickly the tropical abundance asserts itself. Palm trees rise between buildings like green fountains, their fronds catching the morning light and creating shifting patterns of shadow and brilliance. Small temples appear and disappear, their white stupas and colorful decorations offering moments of architectural surprise among the more ordinary structures of suburban life. The train maintains its steady, unhurried pace, and you begin to understand that this is not merely transportation, but a form of meditation in motion. The gentle swaying of the carriage, so subtle you might not notice it if you weren't paying attention, creates a soothing rhythm that seems to synchronize with your heartbeat and breathing. It's as if the train itself is designed to bring passengers into harmony with the landscape they're traveling through, encouraging a state of mind that's perfectly suited to taking in beauty slowly and completely. As we move further from the city center, the air itself begins to change. You can sense it even through the closed windows, a freshness that speaks of open spaces and growing things, a subtle shift from the urban mixture of exhaust and spice and humanity towards something greener and more elemental. When the conductor passes through the carriage, checking tickets with unhurried courtesy, he slides one of the large windows partially open, and immediately the car fills with that sweet, complex scent of tropical morning, flowering trees you couldn't name, the earthy richness of well-watered soil, and underneath it all, that indefinable quality of air that has traveled over vast distances without encountering anything harder than leaves and petals. This is how our journey truly begins, not with the mechanical departure from the platform, but with this gradual immersion into a different way of being. The train carries us forward at exactly the right speed to notice everything while being hurried by nothing. And you settle deeper into your seat, knowing that the best part of our adventure is still ahead, unfolding one peaceful mile at a time through some of the most beautiful country on earth. The countryside unfolds with increasing intimacy now, and you find yourself drawn to the windows on both sides of your carriage, not wanting to miss a single glimpse of the world we're traveling through. The train's rhythm has settled into something that feels almost like breathing. And with each gentle rock and sway, new scenes present themselves beyond the glass like pages turning in a beloved book you've never read before. The first village appears almost without announcement, emerging from the green landscape as naturally as flowers bloom in a garden. There's no dramatic entrance, no sudden change, just a gradual awareness that the scattered houses ahead have intentions, that they belong to each other in ways that trees and fields, beautiful as they are, do not. You notice it first in the paths, the way they begin to connect rather than simply wander, creating purposeful lines between doorways and wells, between small gardens and the larger world beyond. The houses themselves seem to have grown from the earth rather than been built upon it. Their walls, painted in colors that speak of careful attention, soft yellows like early morning sunshine, gentle blues reminiscent of peaceful afternoons, warm terracottas that echo the rich soil beneath. Them catch and hold the light in ways that make each building feel alive, breathing with the day around it. The roofs, many of them red clay tiles weathered smooth by countless seasons, create undulating patterns that mirror the rolling hills beyond, as if the entire village were part of one continuous landscape, shaped by the same patient hands. From your window, you can see into courtyards where daily life unfolds at its own unhurried pace. The train curves gently around a small temple, its white walls and red roof marking the village's spiritual center. Prayer flags flutter from a bow tree whose massive trunk speaks of decades of growth, of seasons witnessed, of countless villagers who have sought its shade for rest or contemplation. Even without stopping, you can feel the peace that surrounds this place, the way it anchors the village in something larger than daily concerns, offering a space where questions can rest and hearts can find their rhythm again. As we begin to leave this first village behind, the transition is as gentle as our arrival. Houses gradually spacing themselves farther apart, gardens giving way once more to wilder growth, the sounds of community life fading back into the quieter music of countryside and train wheels on steel rails. But the feeling of having witnessed something precious remains with you, settling into memory like sediment in a clear stream, enriching everything that follows. The windows that frame these glimpses of village life become, in a way, windows into possibility, reminders that contentment can be found in simple rhythms, that beauty emerges from attention to small things, that home is built not from grand gestures, but from accumulated moments of care, of neighbors waving to passing trains, of children playing games that require nothing but imagination and time. You carry these images with you as the train continues its gentle journey, knowing that more villages await ahead, each with its own particular gifts, its own windows opening onto the endless variety of human happiness. The countryside embraces us again now, the train finding its traveling rhythm once more, carrying us forward toward whatever revelations the next bend in the track might offer. While the memory of the first village windows settles into the growing collection of treasures this journey provides, mile after peaceful mile. The wheels beneath us begin to speak a new language now, their rhythm shifting from the steady percussion of flat countryside to something more deliberate, more purposeful. You can feel the change in your body first, a gentle pressing back into the worn fabric of your seat as the train begins its patient ascent. The engine ahead draws deeper breaths now, its voice growing richer, more resonant as it pulls us up the first gentle slopes toward the foothills that have been beckoning from the horizon for so long. Through the window, the world begins to tilt and reshape itself. Where once the land stretched away in peaceful horizontals, now it starts to fold and gather, creating pockets of shadow and curves of golden light that shift and dance as our perspective climbs higher. The rice paddies below us now gleam like scattered mirrors, their surfaces catching the afternoon sun and throwing it back in brilliant fragments that make you want to close your eyes and simply feel the warmth on your face. The air itself seems to be changing as we rise, growing somehow lighter, cooler against your skin. When the train rounds a curve that opens to the southwest, a breeze flows through the car that carries something new. The green scent of mountain vegetation, the earthier smell of soil that clings to steeper slopes, and underneath it all, the faintest hint of something wild and untamed that lives in higher places. You settle more deeply into your seat, letting your body adjust to this new rhythm of climbing. Your ears register the subtle change in pressure, that gentle sensation that tells you the world is dropping away beneath us, that we're entering a different realm entirely. The train moves with such patience up these initial grades, never hurrying, never straining, just maintaining its steady progress as if it has climbed this path 1,000 times before and knows exactly how to pace itself for the journey ahead. Outside, the vegetation begins to thicken and grow more varied. Where the lowlands offered mostly paddies and scattered palm trees, here the landscape starts to show its wilder nature. Clusters of bamboo appear along the railway cuts, their slender stems swaying in unison like nature's own orchestra section. Between them, smaller trees you can't name create walls of green that seem to pulse with life, their leaves catching and releasing the filtered sunlight in patterns that mesmerize the eye. The train's whistle sounds different here too, as if the changing landscape has altered its very voice. When the engineer sends that familiar call floating ahead of us, it doesn't spread wide across open fields as it did before. Instead, it bounces off the rising terrain, creating echoes that roll back toward us like gentle waves of sound. You hear the original note, then its reflection from a hillside, then perhaps another fainter echo from even further away, until the whole announcement becomes a conversation between our passage and the land that rises to receive us. Your eyes follow a small stream that has appeared alongside the track, tumbling down from somewhere higher up in glints of silver and white. The water moves with such purpose, such clarity, chattering over rocks and fallen branches with a sound that mingles perfectly with the train's own music. Sometimes the stream disappears behind a curtain of vegetation, only to emerge again, further down, as if it's playing hide and seek with your attention. There's something deeply satisfying about watching water find its way downhill while you travel upward, as if you're witnessing a perfect natural balance, a conversation between descent and ascent that has been going on for countless years. The stream knows its path, as well as the train knows its tracks, both following routes carved by patience and repetition, both moving with the unhurried certainty of water finding its level. The first real hill rises to your right now. Not a mountain yet, but definitely more than the gentle swells of the lowlands. Its slope is covered in what looks like a patchwork quilt of different greens. Some areas cleared and planted with crops you can't identify from this distance, others left wild and thick with native growth. Near the top, a few scattered buildings catch the light, their red tile roofs glowing like embers against the verdant background. Someone has built a small shrine on an outcropping of rock halfway up that hillside. A simple white structure that seems to float above the green like a blessing offered to all who pass below. Even from the train, moving at its steady pace, you can see the care that went into placing it just so, where it can watch over the valley while being watched over in return by the higher peaks that rise beyond. The temperature in the car has definitely shifted now. That heavy warmth of the lowlands is giving way to something more refreshing, more invigorating. You don't need to fan yourself anymore. Don't feel that drowsy weight that comes with tropical heat at sea level. Instead, there's an alertness in the air, a clarity that makes colors seem more vivid, sounds more distinct, your own breathing deeper and more satisfying. A group of children appears on a hillside path, walking home from somewhere with the easy stride of those who travel these slopes every day. They notice the train and wave their bright clothing, yellows and blues and vibrant reds, creating moving dots of color against the green backdrop. Their voices carry across the distance, high and clear, calling greetings that you can't understand, but that need no translation. Joy sounds the same in any language, especially when it comes from children who see a train and think immediately of adventures and distant places. You wave back, even though they probably can't see you clearly through the window, because the gesture feels right, feels like the proper response to such generous enthusiasm. The train is carrying you away from them, up into the hills. But for this moment, you're connected by that simple exchange of recognition, that acknowledgement that you're sharing this beautiful afternoon and this spectacular landscape. As the children disappear behind the curve of the hill, you realize that the train is now definitely climbing, not steeply, not dramatically, but with the unmistakable sensation of ascent that you feel in your inner ear, in the way your body settles differently into the seat, in the slight change in how the light falls across the floor of the car. Each revolution of the wheels is carrying you higher into a realm that operates by different rules, where the air is different, the views are broader, and the horizon keeps expanding as you rise to meet it. The railway here shows signs of the engineering required for mountain travel. The curves are more frequent, more pronounced, as the track follows the natural contours of the rising land rather than cutting straight across it as it did in the flatter country. Stone retaining walls appear alongside the roadbed, built from local rock that ranges in color from deep gray to warm gold, depending on how the light strikes it. These walls tell stories of careful construction, of workers who understood that a railroad climbing into the mountains needs to work with the landscape, not against it. Moss has begun to grow in the joints between stones, and small ferns have found footholds in tiny crevices, so that the human engineering has become part of the natural system, supporting not just the railway, but a whole ecosystem of small plants and probably insects and tiny creatures you'll never see, but who make their homes in these carefully fitted stones. The sound of the train reflects off these stone walls, creating a richer, more complex audio environment. Each chuff of the engine, each click of wheels over rail joints, bounces back with slight delays and alterations, so that the train seems to be announcing itself in harmonies rather than single notes. It's like traveling inside a gentle musical composition that changes constantly but never loses its underlying rhythm or sense of forward movement. Higher up the slope to your left, you can see what looks like a tea plantation, its neat rows of bushes creating orderly lines that follow the contours of the hill like green cursive writing across the landscape. Workers move among the plants, their movements economical and practiced, their presence so natural in this setting that they seem less like people imposing themselves on the land and more like another species that belongs here, that has found its proper niche in this ascending world. The sight of the tea plantation brings with it imagined fragrances, the clean grassy scent of tea leaves, the earthier smell of soil that has been carefully tended for generations, the fresher air that comes with altitude and careful cultivation. Even though you're sealed inside the train car, your mind fills in these sensory details, drawing on memory and imagination to complete the picture that your eyes have started. From this higher vantage point, you can look back down into the country you've traveled through, seeing how the landscape layers itself in bands of different greens and golds, how the rice paddies create geometric patterns that become more abstract and beautiful with distance. The villages you passed through earlier are invisible now, absorbed back into the general texture of the settled lowlands. But knowing they're there gives the entire view a sense of inhabited peace, of a land that supports life in all its varied forms. The train enters a cutting now, where the railway builders had to slice through a small ridge to maintain the proper grade. For a few moments, you're traveling between walls of red-brown earth and exposed rock. The world narrowed to this corridor that focuses your attention on the engineering achievement that makes this journey possible. Tree roots hang down from above, and water seeps from the cut faces of earth, creating small gardens of moss and tiny wildflowers that have colonized these artificial cliffs. Then you emerge from the cutting into broader views again, and the world opens up with even more dramatic perspectives. The foothills roll away in all directions now, layer upon layer of rounded peaks and gentle valleys, each one catching the light differently, each one contributing its own note to the vast symphony of rising land that surrounds and embraces your passage. The train continues its patient climb, finding its rhythm in this new terrain, carrying you ever higher into a landscape that seems to offer new revelations with each turn of the wheels, each shift in perspective, each moment of this ascending afternoon that draws you deeper into the heart of the island's elevated beauty. The first hint comes as a fragrance on the air, something green and alive, different from the wild mountain herbs you've been breathing. It drifts through the open window with a subtle sweetness, carrying with it the promise of cultivation, of human hands working in harmony with this elevated earth. You breathe it in slowly, this new scent that seems to rise from the landscape itself, and feel the train beginning another of its gentle turns around what must be a significant bend in the mountainside. As the locomotive follows the curve of the rail, your view opens onto something extraordinary, stretching across the hillsides like nature's own amphitheater. Row upon row of emerald green bushes flow in precise lines that follow every contour of the land. Tea gardens. The terraces cascade down the mountainsides in ribbons of the most vivid green you've ever witnessed, each level catching the afternoon light at a slightly different angle, creating a living mosaic that seems to shimmer and breathe with its own inner life. The train slows slightly as it navigates this new section of track, allowing you ample time to absorb the wonder of these cultivated hillsides. The tea bushes grow in neat, undulating rows that curve and bend with the natural shape of each slope, creating patterns that are both orderly and organic. From your window, you can see how the terraces step down the mountainsides like giant green stairs, each level supported by small retaining walls of weathered stone that have clearly stood here for generations. The sound of the train takes on a different quality here, the wheels finding a steadier rhythm as the track levels somewhat through this cultivated region. The engine's effort becomes less labored, settling into a comfortable chuff, chuff, chuff that harmonizes beautifully with the whisper of wind through countless tea leaves. Occasionally, you hear the distant call of workers somewhere among the terraces, voices carrying across the green expanses in the clear mountain air, speaking in melodic tones that blend seamlessly with the natural sounds of this working landscape. From your comfortable seat, you watch as individual tea pickers become visible among the rows. They move with practiced grace, their colorful saris creating bright spots of orange, pink, and yellow against the endless green of the bushes. Even from the train, you can appreciate the skill in their movements, the quick, precise plucking of tender leaves, the gentle way they navigate between the rows without disturbing the careful order of growth. Their presence adds a human warmth to the landscape that feels both peaceful and purposeful. The air coming through your window has changed completely now, filled with that distinctive aroma of fresh tea leaves warmed by the afternoon sun. It's a scent that seems to clear your thoughts, bringing with it an almost meditative quality that settles into your chest with each breath. Mixed with this green fragrance comes the earthier smell of the terraced soil, rich and dark and carefully tended, along with occasional drifts of wood smoke from small fires scattered throughout the tea estate. The train rounds another gentle curve, and your perspective shifts to reveal the true scope of these tea gardens. They stretch as far as you can see in every direction, transforming entire mountainsides into productive beauty. Some terraces climb so high up the distant peaks that the tea bushes seem to merge with the low-hanging clouds, while others descend into valleys where morning mist still clings to the lowest rows, despite the advancing afternoon. The sheer scale is breathtaking, yet somehow comforting. Evidence of generations of careful cultivation that has enhanced, rather than diminished, the natural beauty of these highlands. You notice how the light plays differently across these cultivated slopes compared to the wild forest you traveled through earlier. The regular spacing of the tea bushes creates a rhythm of light and shadow that pulses gently as your viewing angle changes with the train's movement. Each terrace catches the sun at its own angle, some gleaming bright emerald in full sunlight, others showing deeper, richer greens in partial shade, creating a complex pattern of color that shifts constantly as you watch. The temperature of the air flowing through your window carries the coolness of elevation, tempered by the warmth absorbed by thousands of tea leaves throughout the day. It's a perfect temperature, fresh enough to invigorate your senses, warm enough to feel welcoming. You adjust your position slightly to better catch this pleasant breeze, feeling it lift and move around you with the gentle motion of the train. Small buildings dot the landscape here and there among the tea terraces, processing facilities and storage sheds built in the same weathered stone and red tile roofs that seem characteristic of this region. Smoke rises from a few chimneys, suggesting the ongoing work of drying and preparing the harvested leaves. These structures sit so naturally in the landscape that they seem to have grown from the earth itself, their presence adding to rather than detracting from the pastoral beauty of the scene. The train passes close enough to one group of workers that you can see the details of their craft. An elderly woman moves with particular grace among the tea bushes, her fingers dancing over the plants with the precision born of decades of practice. She plucks only the youngest, most tender shoots, 2 leaves and a bud, you've heard, dropping them into the woven basket at her side with movements so fluid they seem like a form of meditation. Her face, partially shaded by a colorful headscarf, shows the kind of peaceful concentration that speaks of work that feeds the soul as well as the body. The rhythmic sound of the train wheels creates a gentle percussion beneath all the other sounds of this tea garden landscape. You can hear the rustle of thousands of tea leaves moving in the mountain breeze, the distant laughter of workers taking a moment's rest, and the occasional call of birds that nest among the cultivated rows. A small stream threads its way down through one section of terraces, its water sparkling as it catches the light, providing both irrigation and a musical accompaniment to the afternoon's peaceful activity. As the train continues its journey through this tea garden region, you begin to notice the subtle variations in the cultivation. Some terraces feature younger plants, their leaves a brighter, more tender green, while others show the deeper, more mature coloring of established bushes. The pruning patterns differ too. Some sections recently trimmed to encourage new growth, others full and leafy and ready for harvest. This variation creates an even richer tapestry of greens, from the palest spring tones to the deepest forest shades, all woven together across the mountainside like a living quilt. The train's whistle sounds a long, gentle note as you approach what appears to be a small station platform serving the tea estates. Even this simple structure reflects the care and attention that characterizes everything in this region. Clean lines, traditional architecture, flower boxes filled with bright blooms that complement rather than compete with the surrounding tea gardens. A few workers wait on the platform and they wave cheerfully as your train passes, their faces bright with the kind of contentment that comes from meaningful work in beautiful surroundings. The fragrance of the tea gardens has settled around you now like a natural aromatherapy, clearing your mind and deepening your breathing without conscious effort. Each inhalation brings that distinctive green scent, clean and energizing, yet somehow deeply relaxing. It's as if the very air has been purified by its passage over these thousands of carefully tended plants, creating an atmosphere that promotes both alertness and peace, the perfect state for appreciating the beauty of this remarkable landscape. Looking ahead, you can see that the tea terraces continue far into the distance, promising more of this cultivated beauty to come. The afternoon light is beginning to take on that golden quality that makes everything it touches seem to glow from within. And the tea gardens respond magnificently to this illumination. Each row of bushes seems outlined in soft gold, while the shadows between create depths of green so rich they seem almost tangible. The combination creates a scene of such peaceful beauty that you feel privileged simply to witness it, to be carried through this working paradise at the perfect pace, to absorb every detail, every nuance of light and color, and careful human cultivation, harmonizing with the natural grandeur of these ancient mountains. The countryside continues to unfold around you in this golden hour, each vista more enchanting than the last, when gradually you become aware that something extraordinary is approaching. The train begins a gentle curve, and through the windows you catch glimpses of stonework ahead. Not the random scatter of field walls or village buildings, but something altogether more deliberate and magnificent. The railway line is approaching one of Sri Lanka's most celebrated engineering marvels, and you sense the anticipation even in the rhythm of the wheels, which seem to tap out a more ceremonial cadence as they carry you toward this architectural wonder. As the curve completes itself, the 9-arch bridge reveals itself in all its colonial-era grandeur. 9 perfectly proportioned stone arches span a verdant valley, each one a testament to the skill of engineers who built not just for function, but for beauty, creating something that has become as much a part of the landscape as the hills themselves. The bridge stretches ahead of you like a gentle stone rainbow, its weathered blocks mellowed to the color of honey in this evening light, each arch framing a different view of the lush valley below. Your train approaches the bridge with unhurried dignity, and you feel a subtle shift in the quality of sound around you. The usual percussion of wheels on track begins to take on a different character as the railway bed transitions from earth to the solid stone foundations of the bridge. There's something almost musical about this change, a deeper, more resonant note that speaks of permanence and craftsmanship, of stones that have supported countless trains through decades of monsoons and dry seasons, never wavering in their purpose. The first arch passes overhead, and suddenly you're suspended above the valley in a way that feels both thrilling and serene. Through the windows, the world has dropped away, replaced by a bird's-eye view of emerald treetops and cultivated terraces that climb the opposite hillside in neat, ascending lines. The perspective shift is remarkable. Moments ago, you were traveling through this landscape, and now you float above it, granted the privilege of seeing it spread out below like a living map of human harmony with nature. As the train moves steadily across the bridge, each successive arch creates its own momentary frame for the valley panorama. You find yourself drawn to the windows, watching as the view shifts and changes with each stone portal you pass beneath. The engineering is so elegant that you barely feel you're on a bridge at all. There's no sense of precariousness or uncertainty, just the solid confidence of master builders who understood both the science of construction and the poetry of proportion. The stonework itself is mesmerizing up close. These blocks were cut and fitted with a precision that modern machinery might envy, each one weathered to a slightly different shade by years of exposure to sun and rain. Moss has found purchase in some of the mortar joints, adding delicate touches of green to the warm stone palette. You can see where rainwater has traced its own patterns down the faces of the stones, creating subtle variations in color and texture that make each arch unique while maintaining the overall harmony of the structure. Below you, the valley floor reveals details invisible from ground level. Tiny footpaths wind between garden plots where evening cooking fires are beginning to send thin ribbons of smoke into the still air. Children's voices drift up from somewhere among the trees, their laughter and calls blending with the distant lowing of cattle being brought in for the night. The sounds reach you softened by distance and filtered through the evening air, creating an audio backdrop that feels both intimate and dreamlike. The play of light through the arches creates constantly changing patterns of illumination and shadow within your carriage. As each stone frame passes overhead, the quality of light shifts subtly, now warmer as it reflects off the honey-colored stone, now cooler as it streams unfiltered through the gaps between arches. These variations create an almost hypnotic effect, a gentle strobing of golden light that makes the entire bridge crossing feel like a passage through time itself. each arch marking another moment in this unhurried journey through paradise. Your fellow passengers have grown quiet, many drawn to the windows just as you are, everyone seeming to recognize that this crossing represents something special. Even the usual soft conversations have faded to whispers, as if speaking too loudly might somehow diminish the majesty of this moment. There's a collective sense of privilege in the air, the understanding that you're not just traveling from one place to another, but participating in something that connects you to generations of travelers who have made this same crossing, each one surely as moved by the experience as you are now. The engineering achievement becomes even more impressive when you consider the challenges faced by the bridge's builders. This valley crossing required not just spanning distance, but managing elevation changes and accounting for the seasonal floods that would surge through the valley floor during monsoon season. The height of the bridge, which provides such spectacular views, was as much practical necessity as aesthetic choice. Yet the builders chose to create something beautiful rather than merely functional, understanding that this bridge would become a landmark, a destination in itself. Midway across the span, at what feels like the bridge's highest point, you experience a moment of perfect suspension, suspended above the valley, suspended between departure and arrival, suspended in time as the golden hour reaches its most luminous intensity. The view from here encompasses not just the immediate valley, but distant hills rolling away toward the horizon, each ridge softer and bluer than the last, until they fade into the evening sky. It's a perspective that puts your journey into its larger context, showing you just how vast and varied this island landscape truly is. The stone beneath you radiates the day's accumulated warmth, and you can feel this thermal energy somehow transmitting itself through the train itself, as if the bridge is sharing its sun-soaked contentment with every passenger crossing its span. The warmth seems to rise through the floor of your carriage, mixing with the cooling evening air flowing through the open windows to create the perfect temperature for reflection and peaceful observation. As your train approaches the bridge's far end, you begin to understand why this crossing has become legendary among travelers. It's not just the engineering marvel or the spectacular views, but the way this bridge manages to distill the entire Sri Lankan experience into a few perfect minutes. The blend of colonial history and natural beauty, the harmony between human achievement and environmental splendor, the sense of being part of something larger than yourself. All of these elements converge during this brief suspension above the valley floor. The final arch passes overhead, and you feel the subtle shift as the train transitions back onto solid ground, though the magic of the crossing continues to resonate in your memory. Looking back through the rear windows, you can see the bridge stretching away behind you, now revealed in its full, magnificent span. From this perspective, you can truly appreciate the ambitious scope of the project. 9 arches of graduated sizes, creating a stone causeway that seems to flow naturally with the contours of the landscape it spans. The late afternoon light has begun its gradual transition toward evening, and the bridge behind you glows with accumulated warmth from the day's sunshine. Soon other trains will make this crossing. Other travelers will experience their own moments of suspended wonder above this verdant valley. But for now, this moment belongs to you and your fellow passengers, carried safely across by stones laid with care by hands long stilled, part of an endless procession of journeys that connects past and present in the most tangible way possible. The rhythm of the wheels finds its familiar earthbound cadence once again as your train continues its journey through the hill country. But something has changed. You carry with you now the memory of that elevated perspective, that brief time when you saw the landscape spread out below like a promise of all the wonders still to come as the railway continues to thread its patient way through the mountains toward whatever magic awaits around the next curve. That magic reveals itself sooner than you might expect as the train begins to slow with a gentle, almost apologetic deceleration. The familiar rhythm of wheels on rails shifts into something deeper, more resonant, and you realize you're approaching one of the mountain tunnels that puncture these ancient hills like carefully threaded needles. But this isn't the sharp, immediate darkness of a quick passage through rock. This is something altogether more mysterious. The mist finds you first, before the tunnel proper even begins. It seeps through the partially open windows like curious fingers, carrying with it the scent of moss and wet stone, of ferns unfurling in hidden crevices, and something else, something primordial and green that speaks of water trickling through limestone for centuries, untold. The air grows noticeably cooler against your skin, not with the sharp bite of altitude, but with the soft, enveloping coolness of a mountain cave. Your train enters what feels less like a tunnel and more like passing through a cloud that has settled permanently into the mountainside. The mist doesn't simply surround the track, it inhabits this space, moving with its own slow, hypnotic currents. Through the windows, you can barely make out the rough-hewn walls of the tunnel, dark stone glistening with moisture that catches the train's lights and throws them back in countless tiny mirrors. The sound changes here too, becoming something hushed and cathedral-like, as if the mountain itself is holding its breath. The wheels beneath you seem to whisper rather than click now, their sound absorbed and softened by the moisture-heavy air. Each revolution creates a gentle susurration that mingles with the almost inaudible drip of condensation from the tunnel ceiling. Occasionally, a drop finds its way through a window to land cool and surprising on your hand or cheek, carrying with it the mineral taste of deep earth and the freshness of water that has never seen direct sunlight. The mist moves with you, but not quite at your speed. It swirls in lazy eddies around the train cars, sometimes thickening until the world beyond the windows becomes completely opaque, sometimes thinning just enough to reveal glimpses of tunnel wall carved from living rock, or the skeletal framework of the railway infrastructure disappearing into grey obscurity. There's something deeply soothing about this enveloping softness, this gentle erasure of harsh edges and definite boundaries. Your breathing naturally deepens in this moisture-rich air. Each inhalation brings with it the complex perfume of the mountain's interior, the green scent of things growing in permanent shadow, the mineral sharpness of granite and schist, the sweet earthiness of decomposing leaves that have somehow found their way into these depths. The oxygen here feels different, denser somehow, as if it carries within it the concentrated essence of all the forests clinging to these mountainsides. The train continues its patient progress through this subterranean cloud forest. You begin to notice that the mist has its own geography, its own weather patterns in miniature. In some sections of the tunnel, it hangs in perfect stillness, creating an almost solid grey curtain that parts reluctantly as your train pushes through. In others, it moves with purpose, drawn by air currents you cannot see, creating flowing rivers of vapor that cascade along the tunnel walls or spiral upward toward ventilation shafts hidden in the darkness above. The temperature fluctuations are subtle but constant, like walking through pockets of different seasons. One moment, the air carries a hint of the warmth from the sunny hillsides you've left behind, and the next, you're enveloped in the deep coolness of the mountain's heart, where summer and winter mean very little. Your skin registers these changes with a heightened sensitivity, as if the mist has awakened nerve endings you'd forgotten you possessed. Through the grey-white swirls, the train's headlight creates a cone of visibility that extends perhaps 20 feet ahead before dissolving into absolute obscurity. It's like traveling through the softest possible version of blindness, where the absence of clear sight paradoxically heightens every other sense. You become acutely aware of the way sound behaves in this environment, how it seems to travel both further and not as far as it should, muffled by moisture, but also carried on air currents that follow the tunnel's hidden contours. The walls, when they're visible, tell their own story of patient geological time. Water has carved delicate channels in the stone, creating natural gutters that guide the constant seepage into pools you can hear but cannot see. The rock face itself appears ancient beyond measure, marked with the tools of the tunnel builders, but also shaped by eons of slow transformation. Mineral deposits have created abstract patterns in white and pale green, while moisture-loving plants have found impossible footholds in hairline cracks, their presence detected more by scent than sight. Your fellow passengers have fallen into an even deeper quiet than usual, as if the mist demands a kind of reverence. Conversations that might have continued in whispers elsewhere fade entirely here. The only human sounds are the soft rustle of fabric as someone shifts position, the gentle creak of wooden seat frames, or the barely audible sigh of someone settling deeper into this strange, peaceful limbo between the outer world and whatever lies ahead. The lighting inside the train takes on an otherworldly quality as it interacts with the mist that has infiltrated the cars. The warm yellow glow of the overhead lamps seems to extend only partway across the aisle before being absorbed by the moisture-laden air. This creates intimate pools of illumination around each passenger, as if everyone exists in their own private sphere of soft light. The effect is both isolating and comforting, like being wrapped in individual cocoons of gentle visibility. Time becomes fluid in this mist-wrapped passage through the mountain. Without clear visual references, without the usual landmarks of distance and progress, you lose track of how long you've been traveling through this ethereal landscape. Minutes might be hours, or hours might be minutes. The steady, muffled rhythm of the wheels provides the only real measure of forward movement, like a heartbeat that connects you to the certainty that yes, you are still journeying somewhere, still moving through space, even though space has become this soft, grey mystery. The mists seem to breathe with a life of its own, thickening and thinning in cycles that have nothing to do with the train's passage. Sometimes it presses against the windows like a curious creature, and you can see individual droplets forming and sliding down the glass in intricate patterns. Other times it retreats, allowing glimpses of tunnel architecture, the curve of an archway, the geometric precision of stonework, the industrial poetry of steel support beams disappearing into grey obscurity. The scents continue to shift and evolve as the train progresses deeper into the mountain's embrace. Now there's the green smell of moss growing in perfect darkness, then the sharper note of mineral-rich water finding new pathways through stone. Occasionally, a breath of air carries hints of the world outside, the distant fragrance of flowering trees, or the fresh ozone scent that follows mountain rain. These olfactory glimpses of the exterior world make the tunnel feel less like an enclosure and more like a temporary refuge, a quiet pause in the landscape's conversation with itself. Your reflection appears and disappears in the mist-clouded window, sometimes clear enough to meet your own eyes, sometimes fragmenting into impressionistic suggestions of features dissolving into grey softness. There's something profoundly meditative about watching your own image come and go like this, appearing when the mist thins, vanishing when it thickens, as if you yourself are learning to exist in this liminal space between visibility and mystery. The train's gentle swaying feels different here, cushioned somehow by the dense air. Each subtle movement from side to side seems to happen in slow motion, the mist providing a kind of atmospheric suspension that makes every sensation softer, more dreamlike. You find yourself swaying slightly with the train's motion, not fighting it, but allowing yourself to become part of this slow, rhythmic dance through the mountain's misty interior. As the journey through this particular tunnel continues, you begin to understand that you're not simply passing through a hole in the mountain, but rather moving through an ecosystem as complex and alive as any forest or meadow. The mist is its own weather system, the constant seepage its own hydrology, the invisible air currents its own wind patterns. You are traveling through a world within a world, a secret climate that exists in the spaces between the more obvious landscapes of the Sri Lankan hill country. The sound of water becomes more noticeable now, not just the occasional drip, but the subtle music of moisture in constant motion. Water running in channels carved by time, water gathering in hidden pools, water finding its way through cracks and crevices with the patience that only geological time can teach. This liquid symphony provides a counterpoint to the train's steady rhythm, creating a complex composition that speaks of both human engineering and natural persistence. And then, gradually, almost imperceptibly, you begin to sense change approaching. Not the sudden emergence into daylight that might end an ordinary tunnel, but something subtler, a shift in the quality of the mist itself, a barely detectable alteration in the air currents, a sense that this particular passage through the mountain's soft grey heart is preparing to transform into something new, carrying you forward into whatever patient wonder awaits in the continuing story of your journey through these mist-embraced hills. That transformation comes with the softest whisper of change. First, in the way the train's wheels begin to sing a slightly different song against the rails, a subtle shift from their steady mountain rhythm to something that suggests approach, arrival, the gentle deceleration that speaks of stations and brief pauses in the endless forward motion. The mist around you doesn't vanish dramatically, but rather begins to thin with the patience of morning fog, lifting from a quiet lake, revealing glimpses of verdant hillsides that roll away in gentle waves, their surfaces carpeted with tea bushes arranged in neat terrace rows that follow the natural contours of the land like green embroidery stitched across the earth's soft curves. Through the window now, you catch your first glimpse of Ella Station emerging from the dispersing clouds like a scene from a half-remembered dream. The platform appears gradually, materializing piece by piece as the mist retreats. First, the weathered concrete edge where weeds have found purchase in the cracks. Then the simple shelter with its red-tiled roof that catches what filtered sunlight manages to break through the overcast sky. And finally, the handful of people waiting there with the unhurried patience that seems to be woven into the very fabric of this mountain town. They stand in small clusters, some leaning against the painted metal posts that support the platform's modest covering, others sitting on wooden benches whose surfaces have been polished smooth by countless travelers over the years, their conversations creating a gentle murmur that mingles with the sound of your approaching train. The train begins its gradual slowing now, and you feel this deceleration not as an abrupt change, but as a natural settling, like a bird coming to rest on a familiar branch. The locomotive's breathing becomes more pronounced as it works less hard, the rhythm of wheel against rail stretching out, each clickety-clack taking just a moment longer than the last, creating a descending, musical phrase that seems to announce your arrival to the small gathering of people on the platform. There's something deeply satisfying about this gradual transition from motion to stillness, the way the train doesn't simply stop, but rather settles into its brief pause with the grace of someone lowering themselves into a comfortable chair after a pleasant walk. As the train draws alongside the platform, you have the opportunity to observe the small tableau of life unfolding outside your window with the gentle curiosity of someone watching a peaceful scene in a foreign film. An elderly man in a well-worn cardigan sits reading a Tamil newspaper, the pages rustling softly in the mountain breeze, his reading glasses perched on the end of his nose as he turns each page with the deliberate care of someone for whom time is not a pressing concern. Beside him on the bench, a young mother adjusts the colourful sari wrapped around her baby, the infant's tiny face peaceful in sleep despite the mild commotion of the station, while she hums a melody so softly that you can only catch fragments of it when the wind carries the sound in your direction. Near the station house, painted in the faded blue and white colours that seem to mark railway buildings throughout this country, a small group of school children waits with their uniforms neatly pressed despite the early hour, their voices creating a cheerful counterpoint to the more sedate conversations of the adults nearby. Their backpacks bear the gentle wear of daily use, and you notice how they unconsciously mirror each other's movements. When one shifts weight from foot to foot, the others follow suit, creating a small dance of childhood impatience that somehow manages to be both restless and perfectly content at once. The train's final approach brings you close enough to see the texture of the platform itself, where small puddles from an earlier shower reflect the cloudy sky like scattered mirrors, and where a few enterprising sparrows hop between the feet of waiting passengers, searching for dropped crumbs with the bold confidence of creatures who have learned that train stations are reliable sources of unexpected meals. One particularly brave little bird perches on the edge of a puddle, dipping its beak delicately into the water before tilting its head back in that distinctive gesture birds make when drinking, its throat working in tiny pulses as it swallows. The gentle hiss of the train's brakes announces your final arrival at Ella Station, and with it comes that particular shift in atmosphere that occurs when a long journey pauses for breath. The engine settles into stillness with a series of small mechanical sighs, releasing steam in soft puffs that rise and dissipate into the mountain air, while somewhere toward the front of the train, you can hear the conductor's voice calling out the station name in both Sinhala and English, the words carrying along the platform with the relaxed authority of someone who has made this announcement hundreds of times before, but still takes pleasure in the ritual of it. From your seat, you watch as the platform comes alive with the gentle choreography of arrival and departure. Passengers begin to disembark from cars ahead of yours, their movements unhurried as they gather their belongings and step down onto the concrete platform with the careful attention people give to transitions from one mode of being to another. A middle-aged woman emerges carrying a woven basket that appears to contain fresh vegetables, the green tops of carrots and the bright red of tomatoes, creating small splashes of color against the more muted tones of the station setting. She's greeted by what must be her sister, and their embrace speaks of the particular joy that comes from reunions made sweeter by the pleasant inconvenience of mountain travel. A young man with a well-used camera hanging around his neck steps carefully from the train, his eyes already taking in the scene around him with the alert appreciation of someone who has come seeking beauty and expects to find it everywhere he looks. He pauses on the platform to adjust his backpack and consult what appears to be a hand-drawn map, and you can see in his face that mixture of excitement and slight uncertainty that marks the successful traveler, confident enough to venture into unfamiliar places, wise enough to approach them with respect and attention. The station master emerges from the small office building, his uniform pressed Despite the early hour, carrying a clipboard and wearing the expression of someone who takes quiet pride in maintaining order in this small outpost of the railway system, he nods to several of the waiting passengers with the familiarity of someone who has become part of the daily rhythm of this place, and his presence adds to the overall sense that this station, despite its modest size, functions as a genuine community hub where the larger world of the railway meets the intimate scale of mountain town life. Through your window, you notice how the architecture of the station building itself tells a story of colonial engineering adapted to local needs and climate. The red-tiled roof extends beyond the walls to create generous eaves that provide shelter from both sun and rain, while the white-painted walls show the gentle weathering that comes from decades of mountain mists and seasonal rains. Small details catch your eye. The way the gutters have developed a patina of age that speaks more of character than neglect. The wooden trim painted in that particular shade of green that seems to appear on railway buildings. Throughout the former British Empire, the hand-painted signs in multiple languages that direct passengers toward restrooms and waiting areas with the straightforward helpfulness of infrastructure designed for actual use rather than decoration. The sounds of the station create their own gentle symphony now that the train's engine has settled into its resting rhythm. You can hear the soft conversations of people greeting arriving passengers, conducted in a mixture of languages that reflects the cosmopolitan nature of this particular route through the mountains. There's the rhythmic tapping of the station master's pen against his clipboard as he checks items off some list, the rustle of newspaper pages turning in the mountain breeze, the gentle laughter of the school children who seem to have found something amusing in the day's small adventures, and underneath it all, the constant subtle presence of the mountains themselves. That particular quality of sound that occurs in elevated places where voices seem to carry both farther and more intimately than they do at sea level. A small cart appears at the far end of the platform, pushed by an elderly vendor whose arrival brings a sudden spike of interest from both passengers and waiting travelers. The cart bears what appears to be an assortment of snacks and beverages, and you can see steam rising from what must be a container of fresh tea, the vapor creating small clouds that dissipate quickly in the mountain air. The vendor's calls announcing his wares add another layer to the station's acoustic landscape, his voice carrying the practiced rhythm of someone who has perfected the art of making commerce sound like conversation, invitation rather than imposition. What strikes you most profoundly about this scene is the way it demonstrates how travel can create temporary communities among strangers. The platform has become a stage where dozens of individual stories intersect for just a few minutes, each person carrying their own reasons for being here, their own destinations and purposes, yet all participating in this shared moment of pause and transition. The businessman checking his phone creates a small island of urgency that contrasts beautifully with the unhurried patience of the woman feeding small pieces of bread to the fearless sparrows at her feet. The young backpacker studying his guidebook exists in the same space as the local residents, for whom this station represents not adventure, but simply another day's necessary journey to work or market or family obligation. From your seat in the train, you become both observer and participant in this temporary community, connected to the scene outside your window by the simple fact of shared presence in this place at this moment in time. The glass between you and the platform doesn't feel like a barrier so much as a gentle boundary that allows you to experience the full richness of the scene while maintaining your own peaceful space within the journey's continuing narrative. You're part of the station's story without being required to step into any particular role within it, free to simply witness and appreciate the small human dramas and connections unfolding in the mountain air. The conductor's whistle sounds somewhere ahead, not sharp and urgent, but rather melodic and almost conversational, a signal that conveys information without disrupting the peaceful atmosphere that has settled over the platform. This is clearly a station where schedules exist to serve travelers rather than to dominate them, where the rhythm of arrival and departure has been calibrated to acknowledge that some places in the world still operate on scales of time that accommodate reflection and genuine human interaction, rather than mere efficiency. The gentle boarding process itself becomes another meditation, a slow ceremony of settling that unfolds without rush or urgency. The conductor moves through the cars with the practiced grace of someone who understands that his role extends far beyond checking tickets. He becomes a quiet guardian of the journey's rhythm, offering soft nods and knowing glances that seem to acknowledge each passenger's individual relationship with this particular adventure. His uniform, weathered by countless trips along this route, carries the faded dignity of authentic service, and when he speaks, it's in the kind of measured cadence that comes from years of matching his pace to the train's own unhurried temperament. As the wheels begin their first tentative rotations, there's a moment of profound transition that seems to ripple through the entire train. It's not the aggressive lurch of urban transportation, but rather a gentle awakening, as if the train itself is stretching after a peaceful rest, gathering its strength for the climb ahead. The sound begins as the softest whisper of metal against metal, then gradually builds into a steady rhythm that seems to harmonize with the natural acoustics of the surrounding landscape, creating a percussion that enhances rather than interrupts the mountain silence. The initial stretch of track carries you through terrain that still bears traces of the valley's influence, lush patches of green that catch and hold the filtered light, small clearings where wildflowers create unexpected splashes of color against the deepening foliage. But gradually, almost imperceptibly, you begin to sense the change in elevation through subtle shifts that register in your body before your mind fully processes them. The air pressure adjusts slightly, creating a gentle sensation in your ears that serves as nature's own altimeter, while the temperature begins its gradual descent toward the cooler heights that await. The train's engine settles into a different rhythm now, a deeper, more sustained effort that speaks of the serious work of climbing. Yet even this increased exertion maintains a meditative quality, the sound becoming a steady bass note that seems to resonate through the floor of the car and up into your bones, creating a physical connection between your body and the machine's patient labor. The windows reveal the first hints of what's to come, glimpses through the trees of distant peaks that catch the light in ways that suggest heights and vistas still to be discovered. Passengers begin to shift slightly in their seats, drawn by an almost magnetic pull toward the windows. And there's something about ascending altitude that seems to awaken a primal curiosity, a deep-seated human desire to gain perspective, to see farther than we normally can. The conversations, already soft, become even more subdued, as if everyone unconsciously recognizes that they're entering a space that demands a different kind of attention, a more reverent awareness of the gifts that elevation bestows upon those patient enough to climb toward them. The landscape outside begins its own transformation, the tropical abundance of the lower elevations gradually giving way to something more austere but equally beautiful. The trees become more varied in their adaptation to altitude, some growing in the twisted, wind-shaped forms that speak of constant negotiation with the elements, others maintaining their straight-backed dignity while simply growing smaller, more concentrated in their beauty. It's as if nature herself is demonstrating the art of essential living, showing how life adapts and persists by focusing on what truly matters when resources become more precious. The first truly expansive view arrives almost without warning, revealed as the train rounds a curve that suddenly opens the world below like an enormous book spread across the valley floor. The sensation is breathtaking in the most literal sense. You find yourself inhaling more deeply, as if the expanded visual horizon demands expanded lung capacity to fully appreciate. Far below, the landscape arranges itself in patterns that were invisible from ground level. The geometric precision of rice paddies creating a natural mosaic, roads threading through the terrain like silver ribbons, and settlements clustered around water sources in configurations that speak of centuries of human wisdom about living with the land. The quality of light at this elevation carries a different character entirely, cleaner and more direct, with a clarity that seems to add definition to everything it touches. Colors appear more saturated, edges more distinct, distances more comprehensible. It's as if the atmosphere itself has been refined by altitude, stripped of the haze and interference of lower elevations to reveal the world in its most honest form. The green of the forests below takes on new depth, revealing subtle variations in tone and texture that speak of different species, different growing conditions, different relationships with sun and shadow. Other passengers have begun to gather near the windows now, drawn by the magnetic pull of the view, yet even this clustering maintains the peaceful quality that has characterized the entire journey. There's no pushing or jostling, no urgent need to capture the perfect photograph, but rather a shared sense of reverence for what the mountain is offering. People stand quietly side by side, occasionally pointing out details to companions in hushed voices, but mostly simply absorbing the gift of perspective that comes with patient climbing. The train continues its steady ascent, and with each turn of the wheels, the views become more dramatic, more encompassing. You begin to understand why certain places become pilgrimage destinations, why humans have always been drawn to high places for moments of contemplation and renewal. There's something about elevation that seems to reorganize priorities, to put daily concerns into a larger context that both humbles and comforts. From this height, the problems that seemed so pressing at ground level don't disappear, but they do find their proper proportion within the larger landscape of existence. The air entering through the partially opened windows carries new scents now. The sharp, clean smell of mountain vegetation, the mineral tang of stone and thin air, the subtle sweetness of flowers that have adapted to bloom in this rarefied environment. Each breath seems to deliver more oxygen than expected. Or perhaps it's simply that the act of breathing becomes more conscious, and altitude more deliberate, and therefore more satisfying. Your body begins to adjust to the height in ways both obvious and subtle, developing a new relationship with gravity and space that feels both foreign and oddly familiar. The rhythm of the train's movement has evolved too, taking on the character of a mechanical breathing that seems to match the mountain's own respiration. The longer intervals between stations create space for deeper immersion in the experience, allowing consciousness to settle into the slower rhythms that altitude seems to encourage. Time itself appears to move differently up here, not slower exactly, but more deliberately, with more space between moments for awareness to expand and settle. As the train navigates a particularly dramatic section of track, carved into the mountainside, with engineering skill that speaks of deep respect for the natural contours of the land, you catch glimpses of the railway's own history embedded in the landscape. Stone retaining, walls built with techniques that prioritize permanence over speed, bridges that arch across valleys with a grace that suggests their builders understood they were creating not just functional structures, but permanent additions to the mountain's own architecture. These human additions to the landscape feel organic rather than intrusive, evidence of an approach to development that sought harmony rather than domination. The view from these heights reveals the intricate relationship between human habitation and natural systems that remains largely invisible from ground level. Terraced fields follow the natural contours of slopes with mathematical precision, creating patterns that are both functional and beautiful. Villages nestle into protected valleys where water sources and wind patterns create microclimates suitable for human comfort, while leaving the more exposed areas to the wild plants and animals that thrive in such conditions. It's a demonstration of indigenous wisdom about living with rather than against natural systems, knowledge accumulated over generations of careful observation and respectful adaptation. The other passengers seem to sense the significance of these views as well, their quiet appreciation creating an atmosphere of shared reverence that enhances rather than diminishes the individual experience. There's something about witnessing beauty together that amplifies its impact, creating collective moments of awe that become more profound than solitary observation might achieve. Yet even within this shared experience, there's space for personal reflection, for individual connection with whatever elements of the scene speak most directly to each observer's particular sensibility. The highest point of this section of the journey approaches gradually, announced not by dramatic fanfare, but by subtle changes in the train's behavior and the landscape's character. The engine's work becomes slightly easier as grades level out, while the views expand to encompass not just one valley, but several, revealing the true scale of the mountain system and Sri Lanka's remarkable geological complexity. From this elevation, the island's relationship with the surrounding ocean becomes visible as well, the distant shimmer of water creating a boundary that emphasizes both the land's finite nature and its complete self-sufficiency. Up here, the temperature has dropped enough to make the air genuinely refreshing, carrying the kind of coolness that feels restorative rather than chilling. It's the temperature of mountain springs and shaded forest floors, of early morning and late evening, of seasons that exist independent of the tropical heat that characterizes much of the island. This coolness seems to clarify thought as well as sensation, creating mental space that feels expanded and purified, ready for whatever insights the mountain might offer to those patient enough to climb toward them. And as this clarity settles into your awareness, like sediment, finding its natural depth in still water, you become conscious of a subtle shift in the train's rhythm. The steady percussion that has carried you through mountain passes begins to take on a different quality, not slower exactly, but more measured, as if the locomotive itself senses the changing landscape ahead and adjusts its heartbeat accordingly. Through the window, the rigid geometry of mountain peaks starts to soften into gentler contours, and you realize the train has begun its graceful descent into what the locals call Waterfall Valley, a hidden basin carved over millennia by countless streams that have found their way down from the highlands above. The first sign of this transformation appears as a distant shimmer through the forest canopy, not the sharp glint of reflected sunlight, but something softer, more diffused, like silk scarves caught in perpetual motion. As the train curves around a bend cut into the hillside, this shimmer resolves into your first clear view of falling water, a slender ribbon that drops from an invisible source high above the tree line and disappears into a pool so far below that it seems to merge with the jungle itself. The waterfall moves with an unhurried elegance that speaks of geological time, each drop following the same path carved by billions of its predecessors, wearing the rock smooth with infinite patience. The air changes as you descend, gaining weight and moisture that carries new fragrances, the green smell of moss-covered stones, the mineral sweetness of water that has traveled through limestone caves, and underneath it all, the rich earthiness of soil that stays perpetually damp. This atmosphere seems to muffle sound in interesting ways, softening the train's mechanical sounds while amplifying the more delicate notes of the natural world. You begin to hear what at first seems like distant applause, a constant gentle percussion that grows clearer as you realize it's the sound of water meeting stone, repeated across dozens of falls that reveal themselves as the valley opens before you. The valley itself unfolds with the unhurried drama of a theatre curtain rising on an elaborate set. What appeared from above as simple green forest resolves into layers of remarkable complexity. Terraced gardens, where local farmers have learned to work with the natural flow of water, channeling streams through carefully maintained channels that nourish rows of tea plants and vegetable gardens. The terraces follow the valley's natural contours with such organic precision that they seem less like human construction than like something the landscape itself dreamed into existence during particularly creative centuries. Between these cultivated spaces, the wild jungle asserts itself in spectacular fashion. Massive trees whose names you can only guess at stretch their canopies across the rushing streams, their root systems visible along the water's edge, where erosion has exposed networks of remarkable intricacy. Vines cascade from branch to branch, some bearing flowers in colors that seem almost too vivid for reality. Scarlet blooms the size of dinner plates, purple clusters that hang like natural chandeliers, and delicate white blossoms that release their perfume into the humid air with such generous abundance that you can detect their sweetness even through the train's windows. As the train follows its predetermined path along the valley wall, you find yourself at the perfect elevation to observe the waterfalls from multiple angles. Some plunge straight down in single dramatic drops, their water so clear that you can see through the falling columns to the rock face behind. Others descend in stages, pausing in natural basins carved into the stone before spilling over the next ledge in movements that seem choreographed by some invisible hand. The largest falls create their own weather systems, generating mists that rise in spirals and catch the afternoon light in brief, spectacular displays of color. The sound of all this falling water creates an acoustic environment unlike anything you've experienced. It's not the simple white noise of a single waterfall, but a complex symphony where each cascade contributes its own voice to an ever-changing composition. High, crystalline notes from narrow falls mixing with the deeper bass tones of wider cascades, punctuated by the irregular percussion of water striking different types of stone. The overall effect is profoundly soothing, a natural sound bath that seems designed to wash away the accumulated tensions of daily life. You notice how the light behaves differently in this valley, filtered through layers of mist and scattered by countless water droplets suspended in the air. Sunbeams that would appear as straight lines in drier climates here become visible as golden columns, their paths made tangible by the moisture they illuminate. These light effects shift constantly as breezes move the mist and change the density of water in the air, creating an environment where illumination itself seems alive and responsive. The train's descent allows you to observe how water shapes everything in this valley, not just the obvious carved channels and polished stones, but the entire ecosystem that has evolved around this abundance of moisture. The vegetation grows with a lushness that borders on the fantastical, leaves reaching sizes that seem improbable, colors achieving intensities that make you question the adequacy of ordinary color names. Everything appears to glow with health and vitality, as if the constant presence of fresh water has unlocked some secret frequency of growth and renewal. Even the wildlife here moves differently than in drier climates. Birds seem less hurried, their flight patterns more leisurely as they navigate between streams. And through the mist-laden air, you catch glimpses of brilliant plumage, a flash of iridescent blue as a kingfisher dives toward a pool, the elegant silhouette of a heron standing motionless in the shallows, perfectly positioned to strike at fish that swim in waters so clear they appear to be floating in liquid air. Butterflies drift through the humid air with the unhurried grace of living flowers, their wings catching and scattering light in ways that make them appear almost luminous. The geological story written in the valley walls becomes increasingly visible as the train descends. You can see the layers of different stone types, each responding to water erosion in its own characteristic way. Harder rocks form the dramatic overhangs from which the waterfalls leap, while softer sedimentary layers have been carved into curves and hollows that speak of centuries of patient dissolution. The overall effect creates a landscape that feels both ancient and eternally renewable, constantly shaped by forces that operate on timescales far beyond human comprehension. As afternoon light filters through the valley's perpetual mist, it creates an atmosphere of gentle luminosity that seems to emanate from the landscape itself rather than simply falling upon it. This diffused radiance transforms ordinary moments into something approaching the magical, the way light plays across the surface of a pool where multiple streams converge, creating patterns that shift too quickly for the eye to fully capture, but slowly enough to mesmerize the watching mind. Water droplets suspended in air become tiny lenses, each one bending light according to laws of physics that here seem less like scientific principles than like expressions of natural artistry. The temperature continues to moderate as you descend, the mountain coolness gradually giving way to something warmer but still refreshingly comfortable. It's the kind of climate that makes you want to breathe more deeply, to take the air in through your nose and savor its complex mixture of mineral freshness and floral sweetness. This atmosphere seems to carry traces of every element of the valley: microscopic particles of mist from the waterfalls, pollen from flowering trees, the green exhalations of countless plants engaged in their quiet, photosynthetic conversations with sunlight. Your train rounds another curve, and suddenly you're presented with what might be the valley's most spectacular display: a series of waterfalls arranged like a natural staircase, each one feeding the next in a chain of liquid music that stretches from somewhere high above the visible landscape down to a pool so large it resembles a natural lake. The water in this final pool appears almost black from your elevated perspective, its surface broken only by the expanding circles that mark where each upstream cascade delivers its contribution to the collective reservoir. Time seems to operate differently in this valley, measured not by the mechanical precision of clocks, but by the organic rhythms of water finding its way toward the sea. The constant motion creates a sense of eternal present, where each moment flows into the next with the same inevitability as water following the path of least resistance through the landscape. Watching these falls you begin to understand something about patience that can't be learned from books. The way persistent gentleness can accomplish what force cannot, carving beauty from solid stone through nothing more than consistent presence and infinite time. The train's descent brings you close enough to one particularly magnificent waterfall that you can see individual droplets separating from the main flow and catching the light like scattered gems before rejoining the cascade further down. This close, the sound of falling water becomes not just audible but almost tactile. A vibration you can feel as much as hear, resonating in your chest and settling into your bones with therapeutic precision. It's a frequency that seems to tune your entire nervous system to a slower, more natural rhythm, encouraging the kind of deep relaxation that comes not from forcing tension away, but from simply allowing it to be dissolved by something larger and more persistent than any temporary stress. This natural symphony of water and stone creates a kind of acoustic cocoon around the train as it begins to climb once more, leaving the waterfall's thunderous presence behind, but carrying its resonant calm with you like a gift. The track curves upward through a landscape that seems to shift its very identity with each turn of the wheels, and gradually, almost imperceptibly at first, the dense jungle foliage begins to thin and open, revealing glimpses of something entirely different ahead. The first hint comes as a scent carried on the cooling air, something green and clean and faintly astringent, like the smell of rain on fresh leaves, but more concentrated, more purposeful. It's the distinctive aroma of tea, though not the familiar dried leaves you might know from a kitchen cupboard, but something altogether more alive and immediate, the actual growing plant in its natural element, breathing and photosynthesizing and existing in perfect harmony with the mountain air. As the train rounds another gentle curve, the forest suddenly opens like curtains being drawn back, and there before you stretches one of Sri Lanka's legendary tea estates, row upon row of carefully tended bushes cascading down the hillside in precise flowing lines that seem to follow the natural contours of the land while simultaneously transforming them into something deliberately beautiful. The sight takes your breath away, not through dramatic impact, but through a kind of quiet perfection that settles into your consciousness like a meditation made visible. The late afternoon light, that golden hour light that photographers and painters spend their lives chasing, falls across these emerald rows with an almost ethereal quality, as if the sun itself understands the particular beauty of this moment and has adjusted its rays accordingly. Each tea bush seems to glow from within, the young leaves at their tips catching and holding the light like tiny mirrors, while the older, deeper green foliage below provides a rich foundation that makes the entire hillside shimmer with subtle movement. From your window seat, you can see workers moving slowly through the rows, their colorful saris and clothing creating gentle spots of pink and blue and yellow against the endless green. They move with the unhurried rhythm of people who have found their pace and their purpose, their hands selecting leaves with a practiced grace that speaks of generations of knowledge passed down through families who have made their living from these slopes. Even from the distance of the train, There's something deeply soothing about watching this ancient dance between human hands and growing things, a reminder that some activities exist outside the frantic pace of modern life. The train itself seems to slow slightly as it passes through this tea country, as if the engineer understands that such beauty deserves respect and time. The gentle clickety-clack of wheels on rails takes on an even more hypnotic quality, providing a steady percussion beneath the visual symphony spread out before you. You realize that you've unconsciously synchronized your breathing to this rhythm, each inhalation drawing in that clean, green-scented air, each exhalation releasing whatever tension still lingered in your shoulders and neck. As the train continues its leisurely progress, the tea gardens reveal new aspects of themselves with each subtle shift in perspective. You notice how the rows aren't perfectly straight, but flow like gentle rivers down the hillside, curving around natural obstacles, dipping into small valleys, climbing over ridges in a way that suggests decades or perhaps centuries of gradual refinement. There's something deeply satisfying about this marriage of human intention and natural form. The way the tea plants have been encouraged to grow in patterns that enhance rather than fight the underlying landscape. The workers pause occasionally in their picking, straightening their backs and sharing quiet words with their companions. Even these small human interactions seem to happen in slow motion from your vantage point, lending an almost dreamlike quality to the entire scene. You find yourself drawn to the platform's far edge, where a low stone wall provides a natural viewing point for the valley that spreads below, like a vast bowl filled with liquid darkness. From this height, scattered village lights appear as earthbound stars, tiny pinpricks of warmth scattered across distances that seem both infinite and intimate. The air moves differently here at the mountain's shoulder, not quite wind, more like the breath of something vast and patient, carrying with it the mingled perfumes of night-blooming jasmine and the green scents of terraced gardens that cascade down slopes invisible in the darkness, but present in the cool moisture that touches your skin like benediction. A night bird calls from somewhere in the depths below, its voice pure and haunting as a temple bell, and the sound seems to hang in the thin air for impossibly long moments before fading into the larger silence that encompasses all mountain places after dark. Other passengers have found their own quiet spaces along the platform, some sitting on weathered benches, others leaning against supporting posts, all of them engaged in that particular form of mountain meditation that requires no teaching, only the willingness to be present in a place where the earth meets sky with such intimacy that boundaries dissolve into something larger and more encompassing. The station master emerges from his office, lantern in hand, beginning his nightly ritual of checking signals and securing equipment with movements so practiced they have become a form of prayer. His light bobs gently as he moves, creating a traveling circle of illumination that reveals details in brief flashes. A sleeping cat curled beneath a bench, flowering vines that have wound through decorative ironwork, small shrines tucked into corners where marigold petals glow like tiny suns even in the darkness. His presence adds to, rather than disrupts, the station's profound quiet, another element in the larger composition of night sounds and mountain stillness. You settle onto a bench whose wood has been polished smooth by countless travelers, its surface still holding traces of the day's warmth despite the mountain's nighttime coolness. The position offers a perfect view of both the sleeping train and the star-drunk sky above, allowing you to exist in that magical space between earthbound journey and celestial contemplation. Your breathing naturally slows to match the mountain's own rhythm, deeper, more measured, each inhalation bringing not just oxygen, but something more essential, some quality of peace that seems to seep directly into your bloodstream and flow throughout your body like healing. Time becomes fluid here in ways that seem impossible in daylight or at sea level, each moment expanding to contain multitudes while simultaneously collapsing into pure, present tense awareness. The stars wheel overhead with imperceptible majesty, their light traveling across distances so vast that the photons now touching your eyes began their journey before you were born, yet arriving precisely now, in this moment, to illuminate this exact experience of arrival and settling and profound mountain peace. A shooting star traces its brief arc across the southern sky, and you find yourself making not a wish, but an expression of gratitude for this journey, this arrival, this moment of existing between completed travel and whatever comes next. The platform gradually empties as passengers find their way to guest houses or begin walking paths that wind down the mountainside toward distant villages. Each departure is marked by soft farewells, gentle embraces, the quiet exchange of contact information written on paper scraps that flutter briefly in the mountain breeze before being carefully tucked away in pockets and purses. You remain content to witness these partings, to serve as silent blessing for connections formed during the journey's hours and now flowering into something that will outlast the train ride itself. A thin cloud drifts across the moon, softening its light into something even more ethereal, and the entire platform transforms into a stage set for dreams, shadows becoming deeper and more mysterious, edges blurring into impressionist beauty, every surface touched with silver that seems to emanate from within rather than reflecting from above. Thank you for traveling with Sleepy Travel Stories. May your dreams take you to beautiful places tonight. Sleep well, and we'll see you on the next journey.